All right, class, I thought I'd take a moment to go over measuring, even though I did supply some other YouTube videos from other people that I found online that I thought were really good. There's a lot out there. If you're struggling to understand measuring, then definitely do a little bit of research. Google how to measure with a ruler. That would be helpful. But I want to go over it so you're hearing it from me, because I think I have had a lot of success over the years with students and measuring. So don't feel discouraged if you don't already know how to measure. It's okay. In fact, I think about 75 or 80% of the students that I get in my classes still need a little help with measuring. So if you feel like that, that's certainly normal, or becoming more normal as we move along, because a lot of you guys have been doing things digitally and not so many things in the physical realm. So let's just talk about this for a minute. Each of the longer marks represents an inch worth of space. And I like to say it that way because sometimes you get a ruler that's maybe missing the first part. So starting at 0 doesn't always make sense, because you should really use what you have available. So if you have a broken ruler at home and you understand that from one longer mark to the next, that's 1 inch of space, then it's easy to understand that a half of an inch would be half of that amount of space, which is the next shortest line in the middle. So that's a ½ inch of space, and then if we divide that in half, that's 1/4. Okay. So for our class, we're going to be using inches mostly. We'll use ½ inches sometimes. So we'll use 1 inch, we'll use 1/2 of an inch, and we'll use 1/4 of an inch. And then sometimes my advanced students, they'll use 1/8 of an inch. And on a rare occasion or two, people like to get smaller than that. But for the most part, most students usually are using 1 inch and ½ of an inch. Okay, so for those of you that are not aware of this, 1/2 is equal to 0.5, 1/4 is equal to 0.25. So if you'd prefer to think of it in a decimal way, that's fine. Okay, but we do this a lot in this class, so it's really important that you learn it. So when we're starting out, we need to understand that 0 starts at the first hatch mark. It does not start at the end of the ruler. This one is a little bit more obvious because this ruler is rounded. Let me grab one out of the drawer. Actually, I have one right here. But a lot of times in a class, you'll get a ruler like this. And you have to assess what you're looking at, and just make sure that all the edges are straight. This one has a nice straight edge, but right here it looks like it's been shaved away, so it's probably not the best ruler to be using, because right here it looks like it has a little dip in it. Now down here at the end, this one was cut really close to 0, but I thought it was good to show you this because it doesn't always start at the end. You have to look for the mark that represents 0. Okay, so if we're going to be making columns on a paper, and I'll do this very specifically to your tessellation assignment. So I'll turn my paper in a vertical orientation. Let me pull my camera up a little higher so you can see the whole paper. What I'll do is I'll take 0 and I'll put it right at the end. It would be helpful if I put the inches on top. I had the centimeter on top. I wasn't looking when I was talking to you guys. So I have 0 lined up with the edge of the paper. So a quick way to do this is to go and make a mark at 1, a vertical mark. Okay, that's really important. A mark at 2, 3, 4. Again, these are all the long lines that represent 1 inch worth of space. 6, 7, and 8. Okay, you're going to stop there because papers are 8½ inches wide. Okay, and then you're going to move down to a spot where your ruler can reach. Okay, so this ruler can reach all the way across my paper. If I have a larger paper, which we often do, then I'd be making 3 sets of marks. So my next set of marks needs to be in a position where my ruler can reach. Okay, so I will demonstrate the next one by starting with the inches on 2, just in case you might happen to have a broken ruler at home, or you come to school and you happen to get one that's broken. So really we're just concerned about the amount of space. So we need to go from 2 to 3. That would be the same as 1 inch. So it doesn't matter that I didn't go from 0 to 1. It's still the same amount of space. So I'm putting a hatch mark, a very thin vertical mark, in the direction which I intend to make the line. Okay, that's really important. All right, so I want to talk about that. I sometimes get students that like to do these little hatch marks like this. They want to put like these cute little dots, and you don't want to do that. Don't do that, okay? Because then you have to find the center of that dot. You want to use a mark that's a hatch mark, a little vertical line, okay? So once you get your hatch mark set up on the bottom and on the top, then you're going to hold your hand on the ruler. I like to hold my hand spread like we do with our estimated measuring of 5 inches, okay? So I'm going to lightly hold the ruler, and I'm going to look at that mark right there at the top and at the bottom, and I'm going to just let the pencil drag. I'm not going to push any pressure at all. I'm just going to let it drag right along the edge, okay? Now, something that seems to be quite helpful is I look at my pencil's width and I put it on the mark. If I put my pencil on the mark first and I pull my ruler over to it, and then I think about how wide that pencil lead is at the bottom, I'll go right through the center of my mark, and that seems to be really helpful for people, so you might want to try that. Put your pencil on the mark at the top, and then drag your line right through the bottom mark. Okay, so again, you guys need to be able to do this, not just for this project, but for other projects that we have coming up, okay? So our objective right now is to get columns that are all the same width, and these ones happen to be 1 inch in width. You can make them smaller. I suggested if you want more tessellated squares for the tessellation assignment, then you can do them like 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch, whatever you should decide looks the best for your decision-making process in your project, okay? So that's what I got there. I got all the vertical lines figured out. So what I found out by doing that is I make vertical lines pretty well, okay? I could go and measure my horizontal lines and drag my pencil this way, but since I make vertical lines pretty well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn my paper, and I'm going to put my hatch marks in for the other directions, okay? So since we did 1 inch columns, what we'll do is we'll do 1/2 inch. So a 1/2 inch of space is to the center line. So this area between 0 and 0.5 represents 1/2 of an inch, and this area to the right of the 0.5 inch line represents 1/2 an inch. So I want to have 1/2 an inch of space as I go and mark out these other divisions. So I'll put a hatch mark every time I get to 1/2 an inch worth of space, okay? So try not to think of it like 4.55, 5.56, unless that helps you. Try to think of it as the amount of space. So I'm going to make these 1/2 an inch worth of space as I move along, just in case you happen to have, like I said, like a broken ruler or something like that. All right, so again, my ruler can reach down, whoops, I bent my paper's corner. My ruler can reach down to the bottom of the paper very easily. So I'm actually going to take my camera down a bit lower so that you guys can see a little bit better. So I'm going to move my ruler to the bottom or near the bottom. Don't do it right at the bottom. That becomes problematic for a lot of reasons. Just trust me on this. Do it a little bit above the bottom. I'll use that line to level my ruler out. And I'll put a hatch mark every 1/2 inch or every 0.5 inches. And I'm going to go slowly because I know if I get it on the line next to it, then of course I've increased that space by 1/16. So if I do that 16 times, then my paper is going to have a whole inch of error on it by the time I make it to the other end of the paper. So I want to make sure that I'm really actually getting my measurement mark right where I want it, which is right on the 1/2 inch mark. Okay, so when you guys are ready to connect these columns, what you're going to do is you're going to line them up same way that we started. I actually started here at the bottom that time. Hopefully you guys noticed that. And then I made a mark going through. Okay, I can start at the top, whatever's most comfortable for your coordination, and you're going to drag on through. Okay, so the reason I'm suggesting that you grid this out is because, like I said, I had a couple students who I know really well, and they reached out to me, and they had an issue with their diamond pattern on their tessellation not really looking right or having some errors, and it was bothering them. So I decided to come up with a solution, and the solution is to grid it out using this method that you're seeing. So our horizontal lines, which are the ones that I'm working on right now, these ones are going to be half the distance of our vertical lines. So our vertical lines make the columns, and our horizontal lines make the rows. So I did turn my paper because I just happen to like doing the lines vertically as opposed to horizontally. I feel like I keep them straighter. Okay. If you're moving too far away from your body and it's getting uncomfortable, of course, just move your paper into a position that's more comfortable for you. Okay, now draw them really light because you do know that you're going to be erasing them later. This goes without being said for every project. When we're first building it up, we want to keep our line work really light. All right, now if you draw too dark, you're just going to create more work for yourself later on in some way. If it's a painting, you're going to have to put more layers of paint. If it's a drawing, you might have to start over because you drew too dark and it's ruining something. So make sure that when you're making this grid that you're doing it really, really light. Okay, so this grid's interesting because the spaces that we're calling our vertical spaces, okay, so the ones that go up and down, these were 1 inch in distance apart from one another. So each one is 1 inch wide. And these rows happen to be a 1/2 inch in height. Okay, so a lot of times when we make a grid, we'll do 1 inch by 1 inch, and we'll keep them squares when we're doing something else. But for this project, what we're going to do is we're going to do them like this, so that when we go in to make our diamond pattern, that it's a little easier for us. So let me show you the diamond pattern again in this third video, because I want you guys to realize how easy it is, because I certainly don't want you to be afraid of it. So I think I'll start right here. Okay, so I'm just going to put a diamond pattern here to show you how easy it is. So I'm going to make an X, and I know all of you can make an X, so I'm going to go in these 4 squares. Now I can use a ruler if I want, if it's easier for me, and I can go right through the center to both corners, and I can just make an X. Okay, so I've got an X. That's cool. I'm going to go to the next 4, these 4 right here, and I'm going to make an X that goes right through the center. And I'll continue that. So what happens is I get that argyle pattern or that diamond pattern naturally just by crossing the X right through the center of that grouping of 4 rectangles. So I'm hoping that by stating it in that manner, that the light goes on and it clicks for some of you that might have been a little intimidated of this project at first, because I know that none of you are intimidated of writing the letter X. Okay, so for me, when I got down to this part right here, I got a little bit confused. Okay, but just rely on the technique. So we know that when we continue our angle out, in fact, I could probably just draw this box out to let you guys see how that's going to work out. If this came out to 1 inch out here, then we would know that it would be crossing right here. So once in a while you might need to have something extra like that in order to see what angle that this needs to come off the page. Okay, so I think that with 1 inch measuring grid, you might have to do something like this where you're figuring out what the remaining is so that your angle stays nice and accurate. All right, so this is something else that I noted about the tessellation while I was trying to learn how to teach it, because learning how to teach something is really different than learning how to do something. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you think about this row right here, this 1/2 inch row, and that you skip 1 row before you start your next diamond. Okay, so if I go down here, if my diamond's top starts right there, okay, right at the, if I skip this row and I start it here, this is going to be the top of my diamond, like this one here, and it's going to be in this absent space here. So it's going to reflect the correct angle, and it's going to give me the bottom of my boxes naturally. So that would mean that I have to take the X through the center like this, and then I have to make the X here like that. Okay, so again, the whole intention for teaching this in a variety of ways is so that everyone can have some material to reference and be successful, and then to create some evidence that I'm teaching so that I can still hold that expectation really high for you that you're learning, no matter what our circumstances are. I talked to you guys about that. We know this is not the best situation. It's so much more fun for me and for you when you're here, but you're not here. You're at home, and I'm over here without you, trying to teach you these lessons. So I really hope that by creating these additional videos that it's helping you, and that you're actively watching them so that you are getting something out of this year. Okay, so now look at this with me real quick. Okay, all we did was X's up here, but what we got was the top of boxes. Okay, so if I erase this line work in here, this little cross-haired pattern, then I can see that's the top of my boxes. Okay, now I bet some of you are like, oh, I see it. Okay, the reason we're applying color is because even if you see it and you're the artist, maybe sometimes the viewer doesn't see it yet. Okay, so when you choose your colors from your color wheel, if let's say we're going to choose a split complementary color scheme, so that means maybe I pick blue violet and I go across and I notice that yellow orange is its complement. So instead of choosing a complementary color scheme, I'll choose a split. So blue, violet, yellow, and orange would be a split complementary color scheme. So I might choose to put blue, violet on all the tops of my boxes as I go along. Now I might change my mind about how I want to resolve this image, but if I assign a color to the front of the boxes, like if I assign yellow to all the fronts, then I assign orange to all the sides, then another person who's looking at it might go, oh, I see them. But if it's just lines, they might not see it right away. So part of assigning color is, of course, to get you to learn color schemes and a little bit about color theories, but also so that you can give a resolution for the viewer who's looking at this really complicated piece of work. So anyways, I hope this video helped you. I realize it's a little bit long, but I don't want you to be at home by yourself feeling like you can't do it. So good luck. Again, it needs to be at least an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. My suggestions for measuring again, if your columns, I'll just put a little diagram here. If your columns are 1 inch, then your rows need to be half of that. Okay, so the rows in this case would be 1/2 inch. If your columns are 1/2 inch, then your rows would be 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now there's all kinds of different formulas to figure that out, but basically your rows need to be half the height or half the width of your columns. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Please get your line work done on this assignment. That's going to help you be successful next weekend and also this semester.